Nobody stops on US Route 89 for no reason. That stretch of highway north of Sedona, Arizona, is not the kind of road where you pull over to check your phone or stretch your legs. The traffic moves fast. The shoulder is narrow. The canyon walls come in close on one side and the drop-off opens wide on the other. And if you've got any sense at all, you keep your speed and keep your eyes forward. And you do not stop unless something forces you to. Something forced Dora Reyes to stop. She had been riding south out of Flagstaff on a Thursday afternoon. Nothing urgent on the schedule, just a solo run to clear her head before the weekend's club ride. The air at elevation was cool and sharp. The ponderosa pines thinning out as she dropped in altitude, the red rocks of the canyon beginning to appear on the horizon like something out of a painting that nobody could quite believe was real. She came around a long, sweeping curve at about mile marker 41, and her eye caught movement on the shoulder about 300 yards ahead. A car pulled over, hazard lights blinking. She slowed automatically because that's what you do when you ride. You read the road ahead, you prepare for anything, and you never assume that someone with hazard lights on is fine. But then the car pulled back onto the highway, and whatever had been in the back seat, or the trunk, or thrown from the window, she couldn't tell yet, was still on the shoulder, not moving. Dora dropped her speed to almost nothing. She pulled onto the gravel. She put her feet down and sat for a moment, engine idling, looking at the shape in the dirt. It was a dog, a medium-sized dog, brown and white, curled into itself at the edge of the road, like it was trying to take up as little space as possible in a world that had just made very clear it had no use for it. The car that had left it there was already a half-mile down the highway. Dora killed her engine. She got off her bike. She walked slowly toward the animal, the way you walk toward something broken that you don't want to break further. The dog looked up at her. It didn't growl. It didn't try to run. It just looked at her with eyes that were the color of dark honey. And something in those eyes, something exhausted and resigned and still, somehow hoping, went straight through Dora Reyes like a blade. She sat down in the gravel next to it. She said later that she didn't make any decisions in that moment, that she wasn't thinking about what to do next or how this was going to work. She was just sitting there in the dirt on the side of US, Route 89, with a dog that somebody had decided wasn't worth keeping. And she was not going to be the second person that day to leave. What happened in the days and weeks that followed is the kind of story that reminds you why communities exist, why clubs exist, why the Iron Magnolia patch means what it means to the people who wear it and the people who recognize it on the road. Stay with us, because this one is going to stay with you. Here's the thing about riding with a club like Iron Magnolia. The road teaches you things that you can't learn anywhere else. And one of the first things it teaches you, one of the most important things, is that you cannot control what you find. You can plan your route, check your tire pressure, study the weather. You can have every detail of a ride organized down to the mile. And then the road gives you something that wasn't on your plan. And you have to decide right then and there who you are. Most people, in most situations, have the luxury of time. They can think about it. They can ask someone. They can sleep on it. On the road, you get a second, maybe two. You read the situation, you make a call, and you live with what you chose. The Iron Magnolia Club has been making those calls for years now, on roads all across the American Southwest. And the thing that connects every single call, the thing that you find if you look at their history long enough, is that they never look away. Not from a person in need, not from a child, not from a situation that someone else has decided is not their problem, and apparently not from a dog on the side of US Route 89 either. Dora Reyes has been asked many times why she stopped that Thursday afternoon, why she didn't just slow down, register what she was seeing, and keep going the way that most people do when they see something on the side of the road that is going to require something from them. Her answer is always the same. She says, "I stopped because I could see it. And once you see something, you can't unsee it. You can pretend you didn't, but you always know." That's the Iron Magnolia philosophy stripped down to its bones. You see it, you handle it, you move forward having done the thing that needed doing. Simple as that, and harder than it sounds. The dog was male, probably between 3 and 5 years old. though it was hard to tell because he was thin in the way that animals get when they have been going without for a while. Not starving exactly, but not right either. The kind of thin that tells a story about a long stretch of not enough. He had a collar. That detail matters. A collar means someone had chosen this dog at some point. Someone had put something around his neck and said, in whatever way humans say these things to animals, you belong somewhere. You are claimed. The collar had no tags. Dora crouched in the gravel and let him smell her hand before she tried to touch him. This took about 4 minutes. She was not in a hurry. The highway traffic moved past behind her, and she stayed low and still and patient until he decided she was safe. When he pressed his nose against her knuckles, she felt him trembling, not from cold. The afternoon was warm enough. He was trembling from the inside, the way a creature trembles when it has been through something its nervous system hasn't finished processing yet. She put her hand on his side. He flinched once, then leaned into it. That was the moment she knew she was not leaving without him. The practical problem was significant. Dora was on a solo ride. She had a motorcycle, a tank bag, and whatever she happened to have in her jacket pockets. She did not have a pet carrier, a leash, a blanket, or any of the dozen other things that people sensibly bring when they are planning to transport an animal. She was not planning to transport an animal. The road had different plans. She called Ruby first because Ruby is calm in situations that would unhinge most people and because Ruby has a truck. I need you on Route 89, Dora said, south of Flagstaff near mile 41, and I need you to bring something I can put a dog in. There was a pause. How big a dog? Ruby asked. Medium, brown and white. Scared. Another pause. Give me 40 minutes, Ruby said. 40 minutes. Dora sat in the gravel with her hand on a trembling dog's side and waited. Cars and trucks and the occasional motorcycle passed. Nobody else stopped. Nobody else slowed down. She waited. Ruby was there in 38 minutes, which tells you something about how she drives when someone she loves says they need her. She had a wire crate in the truck bed that she used for her own dogs. 2 elderly beagles named Salt and Pepper, who had been riding in that crate on supply runs and camping trips for years. She had a water bowl, a half-eaten bag of kibble, and a soft blanket that smelled like dog and diesel and something like home. When she pulled up and got out and saw the scene, Dora in her riding gear, sitting cross-legged in the dirt on the side of a major highway with a thin brown and white dog practically in her lap, she didn't say anything for a moment. Then she said, "You want to explain to me how this happens every time?" "Every time?" Dora said. "You go out for a solo ride and you come back with something that needs saving. Every single time." Dora considered this. "That's not true," she said. "Sometimes I come back with both." Ruby shook her head and went to get the crate. Loading the dog was a slow process. He did not want to go into the crate at first, and they did not push him. They put the blanket inside and set the water bowl near the opening and let him take his time. The way you let a traumatized animal take its time. Which is to say, all the time it needs, even when you're on the side of a highway and it's getting toward evening, and you need to get moving. After about 12 minutes, he walked in on his own. Ruby latched the crate and looked at Dora. "What's his name?" she asked. Dora had been thinking about this during the 40 minutes she sat waiting. She had gone through a dozen options and rejected them all. And then, while the dog was walking himself into the crate with that particular combination of courage and resignation that only animals and very brave people manage to pull off, the name had arrived on its own. "Route," she said. "His name is Route." Ruby smiled. It was the right name. It was obviously the right name. They loaded Dora's bike into the truck bed alongside the crate, and they drove south towards Sedona as the sun dropped toward the canyon walls and turned everything the color of embers. Route slept the entire way. By the time Dora and Ruby reached the house Dora uses as her home base outside of Sedona, the Iron Magnolia network already knew what had happened. This is one of the things about being in a real club. Information moves, not gossip. There is a difference, and the Iron Magnolia is particular about it. Gossip is information that circulates for the sake of circulation. What moves in the Iron Magnolia is different. It's information that circulates because people need it to act. Ruby had sent a brief message to the group when she was on her way to Route 89. It said only, "Dog situation. Route 89, mile 41, bringing the truck." Anyone have vet connections? That was enough. By the time they arrived, Dora had 3 responses. One from a member named Clara, who had a cousin who worked at a veterinary practice in Cottonwood and could get Route seen first thing in the morning. One from a member called Santos, who had fostered rescue dogs before and was offering to take Route if Dora needed a backup plan. And one from a newer member who simply said, "I'm bringing food." She showed up 20 minutes later with 2 grocery bags, kibble, wet food, treats, a collar with a little Iron Magnolia logo charm on it that she had made herself out of a patch offcut. People in real clubs do things like that. They don't wait to be asked. They see a need and they fill it, and they don't make a big deal about filling it. That is the culture. That is what separates a real club from a group of people who just happen to own motorcycles. Route ate that night for the first time, and what the vet would later tell them had probably been at least 48 hours. He ate slowly, which is actually a better sign than eating fast. Animals that have been without food for too long eat so fast they make themselves sick. Route ate like someone who was rediscovering the concept of tomorrow. Dora sat on the floor next to him while he ate. She did not name what she was feeling. She's not always one for naming things, but anyone watching would have recognized it as the look of someone who has found something worth keeping and knows it. Clara's cousin, a veterinarian named Dr. Alicia Mendoza, who had been practicing in Cottonwood for 12 years, saw Route the following morning. She was thorough and kind, and she talked to Route the entire time she was examining him, which is the mark of someone who understands their patients even when their patients can't talk back. Her findings: Route was malnourished but not critically. He had a healed fracture in his left front leg that had never been properly set, meaning at some point in his life he had broken it, and someone had either not known or not cared enough to have it treated. It had healed on its own, imperfectly, and he walked with a slight unevenness that you had to look for to see. But that Dr. Mendoza said caused him no significant pain. He was microchipped. This is the detail that changed the next 48 hours. When Dr. Mendoza scanned the chip and ran the number, she found a registration, a name, an address in Kingman, Arizona, which is about 240 miles northwest of where Route had been found on US Route 89. 240 miles. Dora stood in the examination room and looked at that number on the screen and felt something shift in her chest that was somewhere between cold and on fire. Someone had not accidentally lost this dog on the side of a highway near Sedona. Someone had driven 240 miles and put him out of a car in a place where he had no chance of finding his way home. They had driven a quarter of the state and abandoned him on one of the busiest tourist corridors in Arizona, wearing a collar with no tags, microchipped so that anyone who found him would see an address, a detail that is either a mistake or one of the cruelest kinds of carelessness, because it means whoever left him there knew how to remove the information that would bring him back and simply didn't bother. Dora called the registered number. No answer. She sent a message to the club that afternoon. Found Route's history. 240 miles from registration address. Kingman, need to talk. They talked. The Iron Magnolia Club does not take the law into their own hands. This is not a principle they talk about often because it's not something they have to think about much. They are not that kind of club. They are the kind of club that works with systems, not around them, because they understand that the systems, imperfect as they are, exist for reasons, and that a group of people who decide they know better than the law is a dangerous thing, regardless of how right they think they are. But they also believe in accountability, in the idea that when someone does something wrong and nobody says anything, the wrong thing becomes a little more normal, and the next time is a little easier, and the time after that. 2 members of the club who had contacts in Mojave County, the county where Kingman sits, made quiet inquiries through channels that existed because of relationships the club had built over years of being present in those communities, not demanding anything, not threatening anyone, just asking questions through people who had the right to ask them. What they learned was not surprising, which somehow made it worse. The registered address was a rental property. The tenants had moved out 6 weeks prior. A neighbor had seen them loading a truck one afternoon and confirmed that there had been a dog, brown and white, medium-sized, that had been left in the backyard for several days before someone from the property management company had finally noticed and called animal control. Animal control had a record. The dog had been picked up. the dog had been held. The registered owner had been contacted multiple times. They had not responded. And then, this is the part that made Dora's jaw go tight when she heard it. The owner had shown up 3 days before the hold period expired and taken the dog back. Taken him back. And then, approximately 2 weeks later, Route had been found on US Route 89 near Sedona, 240 miles away, thin and trembling on the side of the road. The picture this painted was not a mystery. It was something much simpler and much harder to sit with. This dog had been failed repeatedly by someone who was supposed to be responsible for him. Rescued once by a system that was doing its job, returned to the person who had failed him, and then driven across the state and discarded. That was the history of the animal sleeping on a blanket on Dora Reyes' floor. While the club was piecing together Route's past, Route was doing something remarkable in the present. He was learning to trust again. It happened slowly, the way real trust always happens. Not in a single dramatic moment, but in the accumulation of small ones. The first morning, he didn't flinch when Dora walked into the room. The first time, he pressed his whole side against her leg while she was standing in the kitchen. The first time, he ate without watching the door. Santos, the member who had offered to foster, came over 3 days in and spent an afternoon with Route in the backyard. Santos had fostered 11 dogs over the years, animals from shelters, from rescues, from situations not entirely unlike Route's. And she had a way with them that came from practice and genuine affection in equal parts. She watched Route for a while, the way she always watched a new animal before engaging. Reading body language, reading what the dog was saying in the way dogs say things, which is not in words but in posture and eye contact, and the position of ears and tail and where they decide to put their weight when they are standing still. He's been someone's dog, Santos said. Someone's been his person, she clarified. At some point, somewhere. He knows how to be with people. He just forgot that being with people is safe. Dora nodded. That's fixable, Santos said. In fact, that's the easiest thing to fix. You just have to show up, consistently, every single day. You show up and nothing bad happens, and eventually the body stops waiting for the bad thing. Dora looked at Route, who was sitting in a patch of afternoon sun with his eyes half closed, the slight unevenness of his repaired leg visible in the way he held himself. And she thought about how much that applied to more things than just animals. Every single day, she said. Every single day, Santos confirmed. One of the members posted about Route on the club's community page. She didn't make a production of it. She just put up a picture. Route in the backyard, sitting in the sun, that slight lean in his posture, his brown and white coat catching the light, and wrote a short caption about where he had been found and what his story appeared to be, and that he was safe now and getting healthier every day. The response was something nobody had fully anticipated. By the next morning, the post had been shared over 400 times. By the afternoon, it had crossed 1,000. People from Arizona, from Nevada, from as far as Colorado and Texas were leaving comments, some expressing outrage about what had happened to him, some sharing their own stories of animals they had found or rescued, some asking if Route was available for adoption, and some, a surprising number actually, saying things like, "I've driven that stretch of 89 a dozen times, and I always speed through." This made me think about what else I might be missing. That is the unexpected thing about stories like Route's. They don't just change what happens to one animal. They change how people move through the world. They make people look at the shoulder of the road a little more carefully. They remind people that the things they drive past at 70 miles an hour have lives that exist before and after the moment they appear in your windshield. The Iron Magnolia Club has always known this. The road is full of things that matter if you pay attention. The road is not just asphalt and painted lines and distances between places. It is alive with consequence, and every pass through it is a choice about whether to engage with that or not. Route's picture sitting in the sun outside Sedona became something that a lot of people engaged with. Dora found this interesting and a little overwhelming, and ultimately right. About 10 days after Route was found, Dora did something that the club had not done before in quite this way. She organized a ride. Not a fundraising ride exactly, and not a protest ride, and not a charity run in the formal sense. Just a ride. A Route, she smiled every time she said that word now, that went from outside Sedona North on US Route 89 to the exact spot near mile marker 41 where Route had been found, and then back. The stated purpose was simple: to mark the place. To say, as a group of people who travel that road regularly, that this spot on this highway mattered. That something had happened here that was worth acknowledging. She expected maybe 8 riders. She got 23. They came from 3 different Iron Magnolia chapters. They came from 2 allied clubs in the Flagstaff area who had heard about Route and wanted to show up. 3 riders came who had no club affiliation at all. They had just seen the post and owned motorcycles and decided that this was worth their Saturday morning. They gathered in a parking lot south of Sedona as the sun cleared the canyon walls. The air was the kind of cool that makes you glad for your jacket while you're standing still, and exactly right once you're moving. There were bikes of every kind: cruisers and sport bikes and adventure bikes, and a couple of older machines that had clearly been ridden a long time, and were going to keep being ridden a long time because some bikes are just built that way. Dora stood at the front. She didn't give a long speech. That's not her style. She said, "We're going to ride to the place where someone made a bad decision, and we're going to ride back from it together. Route can't do this ride with us. Yet. But he's the reason we're doing it." She started her engine. 22 other engines started behind her, in the overlapping rumble that sounds like weather rolling in from the distance. They rode. There is something powerful about a group of motorcycles moving slowly through a place, not at speed, the way you move when you're covering ground, slowly, attentively. The way a group of people moves when they are saying, "This place matters. We are acknowledging it." 23 motorcycles on the shoulder of US Route 89 near mile marker 41, engines at idle just present. Dora had brought something, a small iron magnolia. Not a patch, but an actual sculpted metal flower that one of the club members had made as a gift for her years ago, and that she had kept in her tank bag on almost every ride since. She set it at the base of the canyon wall near the shoulder. Nothing elaborate, just a marker. Someone took a photo. It circulated later. In the photo, the iron flower sits on sandstone at the edge of one of the most beautiful roads in America. And behind it, 23 motorcycles are visible. And above them, the red rock walls of the canyon are lit by morning sun. It is a remarkable image. Not because of anything dramatic that is happening in it, but because of what it says about the people in it, about the choice to show up, about what it looks like when a community decides that something small and forgotten matters. Route was at home on Dora's floor while this happened. He had eaten breakfast. He had pressed his nose against her hand when she crouched to say goodbye. He had watched her walk out the door and then turned around and walked back to the blanket and lay down in the sun that came through the window. He was not waiting for her to not come back. Not anymore. That was new. That was progress. That was what the weeks of consistent presence had built, one unremarkable morning after another. People ask Dora sometimes what the best part of riding is, and she always answers the same way. She says, "The part where you find out what you actually believe. Not what you think you believe in the abstract when everything is comfortable and theoretical. What you actually believe when the road gives you a test and you have maybe 1 second to respond." Most of the values that people say they hold are never really tested. You can go your whole life believing you are generous, believing you are brave, believing you are the kind of person who would stop, and never know for sure because the situation that would require you to prove it never arrives. The road does not give you that luxury. On US Route 60 in the middle of the night, with a child on the other end of a phone, you find out whether you actually answer. On US Route 89 in the afternoon with a thin dog on the shoulder and a car pulling away, you find out whether you actually stop. The Iron Magnolia Club has been finding these things out, collectively and individually, for years. And what they have learned, what the road has taught them through hundreds of thousands of miles and dozens of moments they didn't plan for, is that their values are not hypothetical. They stop, they answer, they stay. Not because they are special, not because they are better than the people who don't stop, but because they have been shaped by a culture that treats presence as non-negotiable, and they have ridden long enough together that the culture has become reflex. When you ride in a formation for enough years, the The people around you become part of your peripheral vision in a way that changes how you see everything. You are always reading the road ahead and the riders behind you at the same time. You're always aware of the whole picture, not just the piece directly in front of you. That awareness doesn't go away when you park the bike. It goes with you. Dora sees a thin dog on the side of a major highway, and she stops because she has trained herself. The road has trained her to always be looking at the whole picture, to register what is there, to not drive past the piece that doesn't fit and tell herself it's not her problem. Route is asleep on a blanket in Sedona because of that training, because of those miles, because of what a life on the road builds in a person who pays attention. About 3 weeks after Route was found, the question of his permanent home needed to be settled. Dora's situation is complicated by the simple fact that she rides a lot. She's gone for days or weeks at a time, leading runs across the Southwest on State Route 89, Interstate 40, US. Route 163 through Monument Valley, the long haul down Interstate 10 toward the Texas border. A dog needs consistency. A dog, especially a dog who is still in the process of learning that the world is not going to abandon him again, needs to know that the person he belongs to is going to be there. Dora knew this. She had known it since she sat in the gravel on Route 89 and looked at that dog's eyes and felt something shift in her chest. The conversation happened one evening on the porch of the Sedona house with Ruby and Santos, and a woman named Celia, who was one of the founding members of the club and who had, over the years, become something like the club's conscience. The one who said the true thing when everyone else was dancing around it. Celia said, "You know what you want to do." Dora didn't answer right away. "You know the question isn't whether you want to keep him," Celia continued. "The question is how." And that was it, actually. That was the real question. Not whether, but how. Because the Iron Magnolia Club had always found answers to how. They restructured things. Dora would keep Route. Santos would serve as his secondary anchor. The person he knew, the place he knew, the consistent presence when Dora was on a long run. Other club members would rotate through on shorter stays. Route would have a home and a community, the same way every Iron Magnolia member had a home and a community. Not just one person and one place, but a network of people who showed up. This is what a real club gives you. Not just rides, not just brotherhood or sisterhood or whatever word you want to use for the feeling of belonging to something. It gives you infrastructure for a life. When Dora told Ruby the plan, Ruby said, "So he's an Iron Magnolia dog now." "He was always an Iron Magnolia dog," Dora said. "He just didn't have his patch yet." 6 weeks after being found on US Route 89, Route went on his first ride. Not in a sidecar or strapped to a machine. In the back of Ruby's truck, which was clean and lined with blankets and had the crate set up with the door open so he could go in and out as he pleased. They were doing a run-up through the Verde Valley, following State Route 260 east into the White Mountains. A road Dora loves for the way it climbs through juniper, and then ponderosa, and then into the tall timber country above 7,000 feet, where the air gets so clean it almost hurts. Route sat in the truck bed with his head up, watching the land go by. He was not trembling. At the first rest stop outside of Cottonwood, several of the riders came to the truck to see him. He accepted the attention with a dignity that surprised people who hadn't been around him as he'd settled in. No jumping, no excessive anxiety, just a kind of calm presence that felt earned. Pharaoh scratched behind his ears and he leaned into it the way he had learned to lean into things that felt good, which was still new, still something he was practicing. "He looks like a rider," Pharaoh said. "He is a rider," Dora said. "He just takes 4 wheels." They continued east on State Route 260 through Camp Verde and Strawberry, and then up into the mountains, the formation moving through the landscape the way a good formation moves, as one thing, steady and purposeful, taking up its rightful space on the road. Route watched from the truck. The mountains went past. The sky went wide and then wider. The trees got taller and then the trees gave way to meadows and the meadows opened up to views that stretched for miles. The whole of central Arizona laid out below like something being offered. Dora, at the front of the formation, could not see him. But she knew he was there. She knew, in the way you know things about the people and creatures you are responsible for, that he was watching the same horizon she was. That was enough. That was more than enough. Here is what nobody says out loud about a story like Roots, but what everyone who hears it understands without being told. He is not just a dog. He is the thing on the side of the road that most people drive past. He is the inconvenient complication that appears when you're on your way to somewhere else and doesn't fit into the plan you had for the afternoon. He is the situation that would be so easy to acknowledge with a look of mild sadness and then leave behind. Because it's not your problem and you didn't create it. And there are people whose job it is to handle these things. He is all of that. And Dora Reyes got off her motorcycle in the gravel on US Route 89 and sat down next to him anyway. This is what the Iron Magnolia Club stands for, expressed in one afternoon on one highway in the American Southwest. Not a policy, not a slogan, just a woman in a leather jacket who saw something that needed her and stayed. The road through the Southwest, US Route 89, US Route 60, Interstate 40, State Route 12, the loneliest road, the $1 Million Highway up in Colorado, the stretch of US Route 163 through Monument Valley where the buttes rise out of the desert floor like they're trying to get closer to the sky. All of it is full of moments like this. Small moments. Moments that don't announce themselves. Moments that require you to pay attention and then, having paid attention, to do something about what you've seen. The Iron Magnolia Club has been doing something about what they see for years now. On highways that most people treat as corridors between places rather than places themselves. In communities that exist in the spaces between cities, where the road is not a metaphor for anything but simply the actual thing that connects you to the world. They ride these roads not in spite of the inconveniences and complications and unexpected moments that those roads produce. They ride them because of it. Because every mile on a motorcycle is a mile that you are present for, in a way that you cannot be in a car, with its glass and its speed and its insulation from everything the road is actually offering. On a motorcycle, the world comes at you, and you decide moment by moment, mile by mile, what to do with what it gives you. Route is asleep somewhere in Sedona right now, on a blanket that smells like the club and the road and something like belonging. He is not waiting to be abandoned. Not anymore. That is the story. And it matters. If you are a rider watching this, you already know something about what we've been talking about. You know that the road is not neutral. You know that moving through landscape at speed, with the wind in your face and nothing between you and the world, changes the way you see things. It makes you more aware, more present, more willing to acknowledge the things you encounter, because you are encountering them directly, not through a windshield, not through a screen, but with your whole body and your whole attention. That awareness is a responsibility. The Iron Magnolia Club treats it that way. They ride some of the most beautiful roads in the country, US Route 89 through the Red Rock country of Arizona, US, Route 50 across the Nevada desert, State Route 12 through the canyonlands of Utah, the Blue Ridge Parkway on the east side of the country. And they treat every mile of those roads as a place that deserves their attention. If you are not a rider watching this, I want to say something to you too. You do not need a motorcycle to be the person who stops. You do not need a leather jacket or a patch or 5,000 miles on a highway to be someone who pays attention to the world around them and acts on what they see. You need exactly what Dora Reyes had on that Thursday afternoon on US Route 89, which is not a plan or a system or a particularly well-developed sense of moral philosophy. You just need to see it, and then you need to not look away. Route is doing fine, by the way. He has put on weight. He walks more evenly now, according to Dr. Mendoza, who has seen him twice more since that first visit. He still has the slight unevenness from the old fracture, and he always will. But it has become part of how he moves through the world. A reminder of something he survived, not a limitation on what he can do. He runs now in the mornings, alongside Dora in the desert outside Sedona. Not fast, but steady. Head up, tail up, moving through the world like an animal that has decided the world is worth moving through. Iron Magnolia. Every story has a turning point. Ours happen on the road.